It is my privilege to introduce our final speaker today, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Named by Time magazine as a hero of our planet, Mr. Kennedy is the chairman of the Waterkeeper Alliance, and as many of you know, one of the greatest champions of our time for clean air and clean water. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you very much. And please excuse my voice. I want to thank Gene Howe again. Let's give him a big, big applause. And Gene Howe is one of 7 water keepers that we now have working around China. Almost all of them are fighting coal. I want to introduce another keeper who's we got in this area. Let me just read this because we got so many of them. But fighting coal in this area, we got the Willamette, we have the Tualatin, the Rogue River, the Klamath River Keeper, the Columbia River Keeper, the Cook Inlet Keeper, the Spokane River Keeper, the Puget Sound Keeper, Morris Sound Bay Keeper, the Coos Water Keeper, and Lake Pend Oreille in Idaho. All of them are fighting coal plants or transfer stations in their areas. Now I'm going to bring up somebody else just to show you what he looks like. We have one of the leaders, the Canadian river keepers. We have a whole lot of river water keepers in Canada, and this is Mark Madsen. He's our first Madsen. He's our first. And he pioneered a lot of the laws in Canada, the Fisheries Act for suing the big polluters. But a couple of years ago, we used Canadian law, him and me, to sue Detroit Edison, which was a utility in Detroit that was burning coal, and the mercury from the coal was coming over and poisoning people in Canada. And when we sued them, they said the same thing that all the coal companies have been telling us for 30 years when we tell them, your mercury is poisoning our local people. They all say the same thing. They say, that mercury in the fish is not coming from our plants, it's coming from China. So, and this is what the industry says. And we now know that the fish in the Cascades, that the salmon in Portland and up and down the coast are contaminated. Every single salmon on the coast of the Northwest United States and in Vancouver has dangerous levels of mercury in its flesh. We now know by scientific proof that mercury is coming from from China. So why are we taking this coal, American coal, sending it over to China so that they can send us back the acid rain and that they can send us back the mercury to poison our fish? That's something we shouldn't be doing. Well, you can sit down now, Mark. I just wanted to see what you're looking for. Coal is crime. And I've been fighting the coal industry for 30 years. And a lot of the coal that you're going to see coming through here, if you let them get away with this crime, is going to come from the Powder River Basin, and it's going to come from up in Canada. The coal that I've been fighting has been mainly in Appalachia. And I'm going to tell you what I've seen in Appalachia. Because the same thing that happened to Appalachia is what's going to happen here if you let coal into your community. Because wherever coal comes, it's toxic. And it's toxic not just for adults. It's toxic for children, and it's toxic for our democracy, and it's toxic for all of the values that make America an exemplary nation. Coal is the enemy of our country, and it's the enemy of everything we stand for. And if you don't believe that, I tell you, go to West Virginia and see what it's like in coal country, where they don't have democracy anymore, literally. Where there's whole communities, coal says, well, we're bringing prosperity to the state. But just which is what they'll tell you here. They'll say, oh yeah, if you let us bring the coal through here, we'll bring you jobs and we'll bring you prosperity, and that's a lie. And that's what they told for 100 years. They told the people of West Virginia. My father used to say about West Virginia, it's the richest state in the nation because of the value of the coal beneath the land, but it has the poorest people of any state except for Mississippi. Coal doesn't share its wealth. It keeps it for itself, and it makes a few people billionaires by impoverishing everybody else. And anybody who touches coal gets poisoned by it. And you don't just get sick. It poisons your democracy, it poisons your community, it poisons your values. What I would say to you is coal is crime. Do not let it come through this community, because it's not just going to poison the people who happen to have the misfortune of living near the railroad tracks. It's going to poison everybody it touches. It's going to poison your city council. It's going to poison your mayor. It's going to poison the state legislature. It's going to poison the governor, and it's going to poison your children, your groundwater, the air you breathe, and it's going to poison the whole and distort the whole economic system here. And I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in West Virginia, and I've seen in coal country in West Virginia. I've driven through 30 communities in West Virginia that were once thriving communities with union halls and with churches and with schools, and there's nothing left. The landscapes have been empty. The coal companies come in and they say, we're going to mine. We can't have you here because the explosions, because the dust. We don't want you. We're going to poison your water. We're going to poison your well. We don't want to pay you the damages, so we're just going to pay you to move. And when we pay you, you're going to sign a contract. And the contract says that you can never move back into this county again. And that's the contracts that they sign. So the people, you can drive through coal country in West Virginia to towns like Whitesville, and they're just, the only thing left are boarded up union halls, boarded up homes, and boarded up churches and schools, etc. The agways are closed, the grocery stores are closed, there is no economy left. That is the legacy of coal, and it's the legacy of coal everywhere it goes. 2 years ago, I had a lawsuit in West Virginia, and I've been fighting the coal industry in that state for 3 decades. And I had a lawsuit in West Virginia, and we won the biggest judgment, and it's a 6.5-week jury trial. We won the biggest judgment in the history of the state. I went back about a year ago to appeal that judgment in front of the West Virginia Supreme Court, which incidentally is owned by the coal industry and which cut the judgment down to essentially nothing. West Virginia, like I say, they don't put money into any infrastructure that doesn't benefit the coal industry. And I said to the driver, why is this road so smooth? And he said, because there's 22 inches of asphalt on this road. And every inch of asphalt cost the taxpayer millions of dollars per lane, per mile. And I knew why there was 22 inches of asphalt, because the coal trucks weigh 90,000 pounds, and they will pulverize a less robust road. But it's not the coal industry that's paying for that road. It's the people of the state, and it's the federal taxpayer. So when coal says that it's cheap and it's clean, we know they're lying when they say they're clean, but they're also lying when they say they're cheap. If they really had to internalize their costs, if they had to pay the true costs that they are charging to the rest of us, they would be the most catastrophically expensive way to boil a pot of water that's ever been devised. They could not compete in the fields of free market capitalism. The only way they compete is by subverting democracy, escaping the application of the law, and then winning. I'm not exaggerating. Last August, the National Academy of Science released a 10-year report that said that every freshwater fish in America now has dangerous levels of mercury in its flesh. We are living, every fish, and that mercury is coming primarily, about 85% of it, from coal-burning power plants. We are living in our country in a science fiction nightmare today, where my children and the children of most Americans can now no longer engage in the seminal, primal activity of American youth, which is to go fishing with their father or mother. You can go to EPA's website and you can find about a half dozen peer-reviewed studies that are published on that website by the Harvard School of Public Health and others that say that ozone and particulates, which is another class of pollutants from coal-burning power plants, cost this country $345 billion annually in healthcare costs. We could pay for Obamacare half a dozen times over just by eliminating those two pollutants from coal-burning power plants. According to these publications, there are between 47 and 60,000 Americans who die every year from breathing ozone and particulates from those power plants. That's 20 times the number of people who were killed in the World Trade Center attacks, but not just once, year after year after year. And that's 10 million asthma attacks, 1 million lost workdays. These are parts of the cost of coal that they don't tell you about when they say, oh, it's only 11 cents a kilowatt hour. They're not telling you that out of your other pocket, you're paying $345 billion and burying 60,000 Americans every year. If a foreign enemy, a foreign nation, did to our country what the coal industry does to us every day, we would consider it an act of war. Now, I live 2 hours south of the Adirondack Mountains. This is the oldest protected wilderness on the face of the earth. It's been protected as forever wild since 1888. They cost $500 million for a single machine. And they practically dispense with the need for human labor, which indeed is the point. When my father was fighting strip mining in Appalachia back in the 60s, I remember a conversation I had with him when I was 14 years old, where he said to me, they're not just destroying the environment, they're permanently impoverishing these communities, because there is no way that they can regenerate an economy from these barren moonscapes that are left behind. And he said they're doing it so they can break the unions. And that's exactly what they did. When he told me that, there were 151,000 unionized mine workers in West Virginia digging coal out of tunnels in the ground. Today, there are fewer than 14,000 miners left in the state. There are more people working in Walmart in West Virginia than in the coal industry. Fewer than half of them are unionized because the strip industry broke the UMW. And they're taking more coal out of West Virginia with 9 out of 10 workers fired. 2 days from when we got that decision, lobbyists for Massey Coal and Peabody Coal met in the back door of Gail Norton's Interior Department with her first deputy chief, Stephen J. Griles, who was a former lobbyist for Massey Coal and Peabody Coal and who is now serving a 10.5-month jail sentence in the federal penitentiary, but too late for the mountaintop. Because together in that dark room, they hatched a plan where they rewrote the interpretation of one word of the Clean Water Act, the definition of the word fill, to change 30 years of statutory interpretation and to make it legal for the first time, to effectively overrule Judge Hayden's decision and make it legal to dump rock, debris, rubble, garbage, any solid material into any waterway of the United States without a Clean Water Act permit. And this is why I always say, wherever you see coal, you'll see the subversion of our democracy. You'll see the destruction of the democracy at the local level, the disappearance of planning boards, the disappearance of zoning laws. They don't have those anymore in West Virginia. You can't. If you live in West Virginia, you don't have the power as a local person to zone out mountaintop removal mining. They just tell you we're going to do it. You don't have property rights anymore. They can go onto your property and plow it under the ground, and you have no right to object. There's no transparency left in government. Everything is done in secret. 86,000 coal miners in America, 96,000 people employed by the solar industry, and 70,000 people employed by wind. So within 2 years, wind is going to have more people than the coal industry. So we're beating them, and we're forcing them to pay. In Toronto, Mark Madsen has helped get the government of Toronto make a commitment to end all coal, and they blew up the last coal plant about a year ago. They just blew it up. And we know how evil coal is, and we're going to get rid of it in our country. So what are they going to do? They need to stay in business, as the Chinese waterkeepers just told you, and what they're going to do is they're going to say, we still need to sell this coal, we can't sell it to America, because they know what the story is. So now we're going to sell it to China. And the place that they're going to pick, that they desperately need, is the Columbia River Basin, to put all their terminals, and they're going to ship it through your neighborhoods, and they're going to corrupt your politicians and poison your children and give you cancer if you let them. And I would ask you, are you going to let them do this to your community, what they've done to West Virginia?
We have another big round of applause. Thank you. Before everyone heads back to work, please take out your cell phone and make a quick phone call. We need to tell Governor Kit Sauber that we appreciate his leadership, but we need him to do more to protect Oregon, the city of Portland,